What is up, my Shadowverse soldiers, and welcome back to another Shadowverse Evolved video. So today we are going to be doing the Havencraft reveals. I know we did the Dragoncraft and Forestcraft, and now it's time for Havencraft. Well, for Havencraft in set 3, isn't really too many of the cards that come out of the set that really make a new class out of Havencraft, because everyone's really expecting the Egg Explosion, and those are mostly neutral cards. So let's figure out what cards come in Havencraft that might actually help that new line of that version of Havencraft, and let's see what Flame Leviathan has for Havencraft. Alright, and for the first card we have, and that's Alice's Adventure. And for 2, you can play it, and then when it comes into play, you search your deck for a Fairy Tale card, reveal it, and add it to your hand. And you can also activate for 1 play point to engage this card, put this card into your cemetery, and you can select the Fairy Tale follower on your field, give it Rush and a Sail. So you play it for 2, you search your deck for that Fairy Tale follower, and then later on in whatever turn you want to do, you can spend 1 play point to engage it. And then if you play that Fairy Tale, card for the turn, it has that Summoning Sickness. But if it's something that can swing over something and potentially keep you alive, and that's, the whole goal of Havencraft, you play it and, it has that Summoning Sickness, well, Alice's Adventure checks it, and you can spend 1 play point to engage it, put it in the cemetery, give a Rush and a Sail, and it can attack into any follower, honestly, in any position. So that seems pretty good. Next up, we have Amethyst Lion. So for 2, it has Storm, but when it comes into play, you can select another follower on your field with Storm or Ward and give it +1 attack. That's pretty good. It's nothing too crazy. A 2-drop that has Storm that swings for 2. Honestly, Havencraft aggro might be a thing. I'm not sure, but it looks like Havencraft has some more Storm followers, but just besides Holy Falcon. Alright, moving forward, we have Bejeweled Shrine, and for 1, you can activate for 1 play point to engage this card, and you can select a follower on your field with Ward or Storm and give it +1/+1. So it looks like with the Alana's Prayer line, this actually seems like a pretty good card, because Alana's Prayer, you're healing, and you give all your followers +1/+1. And then, if you're playing a Ward that also heals, which you're probably doing in the Alana's Prayer build, this seems like some pretty good support, because most of the cards you're going to have has Ward, and then they'll probably heal you too, and then them being just as beefy as they are, I think this will be a pretty good addition to the Alana Prayers build. Next up, we have Birdkeeping Disciple, and for 4, she has Ward, and then when she comes into play, you can engage an amulet on your field and summon a Holy Falcon token. Well, that's pretty interesting, because if certain amulets don't need to be engaged for the turn you're playing, let's say you need something, that can just swing over a little 2-drop. Well, my 1-drop amulet, that probably just draws me a card if I engage it or whatnot. I can just summon Birdkeeping Disciple, and then I guess engage another amulet to summon a Holy Falcon. Is that super practical? No, but in cases where you're running maybe a bronze or a silver tournament, I feel like this might actually be clutch. Next up, we have Diamond Master. So for 4, you can evolve her for 3 to evolve her. And if this card can be selected by your opponent's card effects, it must be selected. And when she comes into play, you can choose one of the following 2 effects. 1, give this follower Storm, or 2, give this follower Ward. So, do you want to swing for 2, or do you want to have a good solid defense for 5? I see there's some flexibility here with Diamond Master, and I feel like with this Storm ability, hopefully the evolve form of her can see if you choose the Storm version of her, then maybe evolving might be worth. Alright, looking at the Diamond Master Evo, so if this card can be selected by your opponent's skills, it still must be selected, and on evolve, you select a follower with Ward or Storm in your cemetery that costs 3 or less play points and put it onto your field, which is pretty interesting. So like I said, for the Alana's Prayer build, with those Guardian Nuns or, the Angels that cost less than 3 that have Ward, and I think a little bit of the Majuro family have a couple of those followers have Storm, and you can put them on to play with the Diamond Master Evo. Alright, so next up we have March Hare's Tea Time with a wall of text. So for 4, when it comes into play, you look at the top 5 cards of your deck. You may put a Fairy Tale follower that costs 5 or less play points from among them onto your field. Put the rest on the bottom of your deck in any order, and then you can activate for 2 play points to engage this card and put this card into your cemetery. Then you select a Fairy Tale follower in your cemetery that costs 3 or less play points and put it onto your field. I'm pretty sure this is a pretty good card for both those things. So you play it for 4, and then you look at the top 5, and you find a Fairy Tale follower that costs 5 or less, and then you put it from the deck onto the field, which is pretty interesting. So you don't really lose any crazy hand size there, and you can probably get a pretty good Fairy Tale follower from it. That being the neutral cards and whatnot, and then Havencraft ones. And then you can also, on the next turn, or even the same turn if you're that late in the game, which you probably should be if you're playing Havencraft, you can also, to activate the 2 play points, to engage it, put it in the cemetery, and you can play a Fairy Tale follower that costs 3 or less from your cemetery onto the field. Now, is this pretty good with the Humpty Dumpty line? I'm not sure what the Humpty Dumpty cards do with the explosions. So I know you can keep cycling, these cards from the cemetery. That's what it looks like Havencraft is doing. It's cycling these cards from either your cemetery that have Storm or Ward, or, you're getting them from the top of your deck. But it really has to focus on the Fairy Tale followers, and we've only just seen the amulet. So let's see what more of these Fairy Tale followers look like. Alright, next up we have Odette White Swan, and for 5, when she comes into play, you give each other follower on your field and your leader +2 defense. And then last word, so when she dies, you give each follower on your field and your leader +2 defense as well. So, looking at this card already, I can already see a bit of the Jeanne d'Arc inside of it, just without the opponent's board effect of minusing 2 everything. But on the fact that it gives everything +2 defense on your side, minus her, and then when she dies as well, she does it again. I feel like a card that would go really well with this is Dark Offering. So you play her, and then you get the effect, and then if you can't really remove her, because your opponent doesn't want that last word's effect to go off, which, they probably will eventually. But if you're going against Havencraft, and they're probably going to banish it so you can get that last word's effect, you just do the Dark Offering, and there you go. You can get that effect off of there too. And then you get that extra +3 defense and life towards yourself too, so you gain 5 and then you draw a card, which is actually pretty good. All right, moving on, we have Pinion Prince. So before it was Pinion Prayer, and now we have the Prince itself. And for 5, you can evolve him for 1 to evolve him, but when he comes into play, Fanfare, you select a Fairy Tale card in your cemetery and put it into your EX area and put a Fairy Tale counter on it. So I like the fact that most of the cards that you need and probably want to put a Fairy Tale counter on it, you're probably going to choose. But if you have a really good Fairy Tale card that's in your cemetery and that probably could change the game, you can also put it in the EX area, have that Fairy Tale counter on it, not matter because it doesn't really specify the cost, just as long as it's a Fairy Tale card. So, and that's what's pretty good for Pinion Prince. Being so late in the game, you can get any card into your EX area, and then you can play later on throughout the game. Looking at the Pinion Prince Evo, he has a sail, and the one thing about it is it's nice that he has that rush because he's evolved, but at the same time it feels pretty good because look at his stats that he's a 5/6. So we know anything about Shadowverse, and how we talk on this channel, that if anything is going to do anything, it at least has 5 defense. And if it's something that's too out of control, then this looks like a card that can definitely handle it because it has 5 attack. So it'll be going into anything that has 5 or lower defense, and most of the time those are not really game crazy, game ending cards, but they're game changing cards. So you definitely want to get rid of those cards, and Pinion Prince is definitely something you want to use to get rid of those game changing cards. Alright, moving on, we have Princess Snow White, and for 2 she has Ward. And then Fanfare, when she comes into play, if this follower is put onto the field from your hand, put a Fairy Tale counter on it. And then Fanfare, if this follower was put onto the field from anywhere else other than your hand, you give it +1/+1. And then last words, if this card has a Fairy Tale counter on it, put it into your EX area. So this is a pretty good card for 2. It does have Ward, but when she comes into play, put a Fairy Tale counter on it. And then you let her be that Ward when she gets removed. If she's not banished, that is, you put her into the EX area, and then when you play her again, she'll have that +1/+1. So she'll be a 3/3 with Ward. She does not have the Fairy Tale counter, and unfortunately, but she is a 3/3 with Ward, and you can just ward up again that very next turn to stop an attack. Alright, next up we have Ruby Falcon, and for 3, you can evolve him for 1, he has Ward, and whenever another follower on your field with Ward or Storm attacks, you deal 1 damage to each enemy leader, and you can also activate for 2 play points to give this follower Storm. So this card can trigger in itself. So let's say on turn 5 I play this for 3, and then I use those extra 2 play points to give them Storm, and then let them swing through, so it's 4 damage coming through. And this is also a pretty good neat card to just have on the field before you swing face with a whole bunch of stuff. So probably Laevateinn Prayer build. Like I'm saying, it feels like Laevateinn Prayer is getting some pretty huge buffs just for the cards that say, hey, if Ward does this, then do that. Because most of the cards that you're playing in Laevateinn Prayer has Ward, and most of the stuff you're using to heal, so on and so forth. But with Ruby Falcon, it seems like you spend that 3. He has ward, and then you've got those extra play points. You can give it storm, but it looks like if you're going to be swinging with a whole bunch of storm and ward followers, you'll be pinging with extra. It's like the ancient elk for forestcraft. Now Havencraft has one, and it's just for wards and storm. Looking at the Ruby Falcon Evo, so it still has ward, and it still has the ability of whenever another follower on your field with warm or storm attacks, you deal 1 damage each enemy leader. And then on evolve, you select the enemy follower on the field and deal it 2 damage. And then you can still also activate 2 play points to give this follower storm. So it seems like the real reason you evolved it is just to get the angelic snipe. And then if you're still going in with that in huge, let's say, you know, Bellringer is stopping you from going for like an entire turn of attacks. Well, if you just evolve Ruby Falcon, you can definitely just deal with that Bellringer. Yes, they draw, but you know, who cares if you're going in for the game. All right, next up we have Tin Soldier, and for 3, when he comes into play, if this follower is put onto your field from anywhere other than your hand, you put a Fairy Tail counter on it. And you can activate to remove a Fairy Tail counter from this card, and then you select the enemy leader or enemy follower in the field and deal it 2 damage. So it seems like a whole bunch of these cards seem to be doing a little bit of what Angelic Snipe does, but instead, you know, you get a follower out of it. And then with Tin Soldier, if it's like summon for like, let's say Pinion Prince puts it into the EX, he has a Fairy Tail counter on it. And then you play Tin Soldier and he gets an extra one, so he has 2. So at any point, you know, you can remove a Fairy Tail counter, so 2 from it, and then deal 4 damage to something. That's what I'm thinking, because it doesn't seem like you can only activate this ability once per turn, because it doesn't say so. But if that's the case, you know, then you play him, remove 1 for a turn, use an Angelic Snipe. That's fine, instead of just using the extra card out of your hand. You're doing this all from the cemetery with the Pinion Prince combo. Next up, we're moving on to White Knight. So for 6, if your leader's defense is 5 or less, this card costs 5 less to play, and he has Russian Ward. So this guy becomes a 1-drop. If you're really in a tight situation, your White Knight can come save you potentially. So he costs 1, and unfortunately he doesn't heal you, but he does offer a solid shield to hide behind in case you need some chance to recover. Alright, next up we have Wingy Chirpy Gemstone, and for 1 you can evolve him for 2, and then to evolve him, and he has ward, so he's a cute little 1-drop with 1/1 with ward. Alright, lastly getting to the Wingy Chirpy Gemstone Evo. So it still has ward, and on evolve you search your deck for a follower with 2 or less attack and reveal it and add it to your hand. So if you're having like a pretty hard game, pretty rough game, and you haven't seen like Prison Priestess or like maybe a Bellringer, and you're going against one of those aggro decks and you just need to see something like that just to have in response, I feel like this is a pretty good card just to have in case, you know, you're just really having a rough game. Maybe like a 1-of wouldn't be too bad, but I feel like it's pretty good. Just a card that can search out Bellringer is pretty nice in itself. So that's pretty much it. Alright guys, well that is the last card for the Havencraft build. Thank you so much for watching. You guys do not know how much I appreciate you guys watching this stuff. Also, I wanted to give a little PSA that I am going to be doing a World Commentary co-stream with Rika TCG. I will put a link down in the description to his YouTube channel and his Twitch below too. And I will hopefully be seeing you guys on Friday when we are doing it. I'll post the thing right here. Alright guys, make sure you're safe in whatever you do tonight and safe whatever you do for the rest of the year. I will see you guys in the next one. Bye.
I gave you all my love, baby, my heart is cold when you're around. You warm it up, liquid gold, baby, yeah, you warm it up, liquid gold, baby, and my affection, all that paper you wasted. Take my love.